This is the Ecommerce Braintrust, a podcast about building momentum online for established consumer brands. Join our hosts and their expert guests for high-level conversations about e-commerce strategies, trends, and innovations. Access our Braintrust and boost your brand's e-commerce potential.
Hello and welcome to the Ecommerce Braintrust podcast. I'm Jordan Ripley, Director of Retail Operations here at Acadia, sitting in for our usual host, Julie Spear. Today, we're lucky enough to have a couple of the brightest minds at Acadia. They spend their days thinking about organic optimization for our brand partners, both on Google and Amazon, respectively. Our first guest, Scott Walldren, who leads CEO here at Acadia, someone with more than 15 years of experience leading SEO and paid search teams across both brands and agencies. And then we also have Julian Galindo, who's one of our senior account managers here in our retail team, very much a noted expert internally on driving organic growth, how SEO plays into that. I've invited both of them on the show today to kind of pick apart the idea that at least I have, and I think many in the industry might have, which is a lot of the things that you see Amazon do. If you want to understand how those might be progressing, you could look at what Google might have done a few years prior in the ads ecosystem, in the organic optimization ecosystem. And so we're going to pick apart that theory today, where it might hold true, some other areas where it maybe might not hold true. It should be a very robust conversation. And with that, I am so happy to have you on. Welcome, Scott, and welcome, Julian.
Great to be here.
Yeah, exciting. Thanks for having us on.
I appreciate both of you taking the time during a shopping time of the year, either if you're browsing for yourself or managing your client's business. But let's go ahead and dive into it. I think most of our audience, being that this is a sort of e-commerce focused podcast, is familiar with how SEO plays into the e-commerce world, particularly when it comes to Amazon. Scott, as someone who has a broader view of the industry and how SEO kind of plays a role within the constructs of digital marketing generally, I'm wondering if you could just give us a primer of Google SEO specifically. What are the sort of key areas and demarcations that traditional Google SEO has evolved in the decade plus or so that you've been working with it?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it definitely mirrors Taylor Swift's Eras tour. So we've got starting out with a pretty simple production, 10 blue links, and then we crescendo and build up into today where we've got AI driving everything. So the Gemini phase, search results seem to know us better than ourselves sometimes and anticipating that next click. So I guess the Goo instead of Tay Eras tour would look like this. So I've got keyword karaoke, which is the early 2000s. Pretty much you could stuff your meta tags with keywords like cheap sunglasses, even if you weren't selling cheap sunglasses.
Okay.
You have people ranking for the weirdest of things. That's where Google really made its entrance then, was with this idea of its backlink boy band in the mid 2000s. So you've got this idea of PageRank as part of Google's founding patent, which talks about external sort of validation. So links from other sites becomes the currency. And the higher you rank, the would be driven by how many links you have. Kind of like collecting Pokemon cards.
Okay.
And then we kind of move into the middle period before we're getting into the more modern area where Google caught on to those kind of spammy tactics. So you have people buying links, stuffing keywords. They have the Panda and Penguin algorithm updates, which cracked down on thin content and spammy links. And many sites did indeed face the music. And then you have the rich kids search results page period or era in the tour. About 2015 is actually when I got back into SEO in real earnest here. And that's where you started to see things like rich snippets, maps, star ratings appearing along things, and videos being embedded directly or clickable within the SERP. So multimedia became a big part of it. And then in the 2020s here, the EEAT World Tour, those words stand for expertise, experience, authority, and trust. And this is where Google is really looking for more of those both varied perspectives, but also credentials in the author. So clients that we work with that are like in beauty, health, medical spaces, having doctors review content, that really made it stand out. And now we're in the Gemini era. So kind of concluding our world tour, AI is really leading the way. We're seeing it probably at a larger clip, certainly than a year ago when it started to roll out, AI overviews in the results, which are really automatically generated and pulling from different sources, all in a digestible chunk without you needing to click on anything.
Yeah. Fantastic work, Scott. I was not expecting an entire extended Taylor Swift metaphor to walk us through that, but I appreciate that we got that. As someone who shares her age and birth year, this is like a great way to relate to me for me to understand SEO. So that's fantastic, Julian. I know you don't have daughters, so maybe you're less afflicted with the world of Tay-Tay, but you are someone very familiar with Amazon. I'm wondering, a lot of these things, right, are not so relevant to Amazon, right? Like the idea of inbound links to derive authority. But some of these things I think do map pretty neatly to the world of Amazon. So I'm wondering if you were to kind of place Amazon SEO as it exists today along that spectrum of Google SEO evolution, like where do you see us in that spectrum?
Yeah, and candidly, I'm not a Swiftie, so I don't have the context here, and I don't have the discography or errors to outline for sure. But as it relates to Amazon, I think we're kind of seeing the change in quality versus quantity in terms of SEO, right? And historically, what I think people understood based on like the A9 algorithm and how do I rank as high as possible, it's okay, I need to look at the marketplace, look at a category, look at competitors that are selling, and what terms are they using and what's trending. And I need to put as many of these in my product title that are relevant to my product, but I need to almost like stuff my title and hit the character with all these terms, or I'm never going to rank appropriately. And then what doesn't work goes to the bullet points and then to the description and so on. And I think now it's starting to shift from what I'm seeing to more what is the best term to rank for. And you always want to avoid the keyword stuffing because it just looks a bit tacky and it's not like the best experience for customers. And what can you pick to use in your title? And then what aren't you using in your title that you could put maybe 1 to 2 terms in your first bullet point and so on and so forth throughout your product page versus multiple in different areas. And I think that's happening because there's a little bit of like an overwhelming feeling of people having to search and get the best experience possible. And it's also like an AI driven, I think, change where how quickly can you sell a product and give people what they need to know without having them have to read through all of your bullet points, all of your time. Like it's quick hitting images, and do your images correlate to the best selling points of your product? And so how do you do that with like 1 to 2 strong search terms versus a bunch?
What you've described, right, is starting from a similar basis, right, of the cheap sunglasses era, right? These are 10 profitable keywords. How do I rank for those? I'll put them 30 times in my title, even if it means my product title is super cheap sunglasses for cheap people that want sunglasses.
Right.
Really just like utter crap.
You could, in your mind, lay it out, right? Like black sunglasses polarized for men and women, UV protected, square frame, 52-inch frame, like all of those would be in the title. And it's like, okay,
yeah,
that's great. And I would have potentially ranked for those, but do I really need to put all of that in my title, or should I just put, to your point, like what's the most important thing that they're looking for, like black square frame sunglasses?
Yeah, I remember like the eras of you would have the pipes, those vertical lines between like 100 keywords, and that was a product title. I think what's interesting about Amazon and Scott, I'd love your perspective on this, but from Amazon's side, the ultimate end goal of SEO is conversion, right? Yes, I need to get somebody on that page, but I also need that person to buy the product. So if it looks super scammy or just bad, I'm going to be trading off conversion for ranking. And ultimately, Amazon will dig that because conversion is such an important signal for organic rank. Is like, how am I actually performing once the shopper gets to my page? Whereas in the early days of Google SEO, this is what I imagined. It's like I could get ad placement, I could monetize organic search traffic without the need for conversion all the time. Is that square with like your perspective, Scott?
Yeah, Jordan. So, I mean, I think we saw that exact same thing happen with keyword stuffing. And then it became more and more from Google's head of web spam at the time, a guy named Matt Cutts, who's, I guess he's now gone off and I think he's saving the world.
Presumably touring with Taylor Swift, I imagine.
Exactly. Yeah, world tour. But he said, write for users and not Google. And of course, it's this drumbeat from the last 20 years of search that keeps the beat goes on. As they refine the algorithm time and time again, we're now seeing like with AI, Google is rewriting product titles in the search results. They're taking what you're putting into your product feed or on your website. They're sort of anticipating, well, this is what you mean. Like you said, Julian, with the example of like black square frame sunglasses, for me, I'm a guy with a huge head, not just ego, but also physiologically, I have a large head. I'd be looking for a large frame black sunglasses or black square frame sunglasses for large heads. That part of it is there. And so what we've taken to be kind of our mandate from all of this is, we're already rewriting titles to reflect what people are actually searching for, not every feature, and then putting into the descriptions, which you would like into your bullet points or the first bullet points, those additional features that are like, they're nice to know, but they're not the must-have things that people are searching for.
In addition to AI, which we'll touch on as a sort of broad sweeping change impacting digital marketing generally, but Scott, what you highlighted around the evolution of just blue links in a SERP to more rich content, I feel like this is something too that Amazon has really started to dabble in over the last 2-3 years. Julian, I'm curious your perspective. I think about like editorial recommendations, which I know have come and gone, but to me, this is an area that's interesting with Amazon too. Do you feel like in the push and pull between I'm just going to only be surface products, which are essentially the blue links of Amazon, where it's just going to show me the A9 ranking of a product, how relevant is that search term, versus sort of collections of products that are like high ratings and people love these or people return, that sort of thing. Like, where do you see SERP going between those two? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think like that's a huge part of it, because you see that now even on product listings where if you open it, they have a little badge and it says either customers frequently keep this or customers frequently return it. And they're summarizing the overall experience of that product from everybody who's bought and left a review. So you don't even really have to go look at the reviews, which is the biggest selling point of Amazon, right? Is you get the honest feedback from people who have purchased the product to understand, is this really something that I should spend my money on? They're kind of trying to get ahead of that and take that experience away, or not, like, I guess, change the experience so you can just see it immediately. And there are so many off Amazon articles that people will invest in and they can have an impact on search. And like, these are the 10 best. But if somebody goes to that product page and Amazon's system has flagged it as an item that is frequently returned, then yes, you've invested in that off Amazon push, but Amazon's own system is identifying the product in a different, you know what I mean? Or it could be the same, like people do keep it. So it's just something to consider, right? Their software is always going to be top of the line, and they're definitely getting ahead of it as best they can to optimize that experience for people, it seems.
Something I think about, feel like a lot of the way AI will influence search, and Scott, you've already touched on this, is like just a faster customer journey from like question to answer. And Amazon specifically, I feel like, they built so much of their business on the value proposition of the endless shelf and infinite assortment. But the downside of that is, as a consumer, personally, I feel like sometimes that infinite assortment is overwhelming. If I have a search term and I see 100 of the same direct import Chinese manufacturing product for that, it's like, how do I even suss out which is the best product for that? And that's where I think a lot of that quick editorialization of this is returned, or people love this, or this is the summary of all the reviews, like helps to kind of cut through that noise. I think there's a lot of parallels in the sort of journey of Amazon and Google, and using Google as a crystal ball of what we might see from Amazon in the years to come. I'm thinking now about what we do with that information. We, of course, deal with clients both on Amazon SEO and for Google SEO. And I'm wondering, as these change, like, what is our sort of current process of understanding the lay of the land and where the opportunities are for both channels and how those might mirror each other? Scott, maybe starting with you as kind of the OG of the SEO landscape, like, what does the modern day opportunity analysis and assessment for a brand's SEO look like?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jordan. So I think the basic rules of consulting on this and approaching it, everyone with fresh eyes, is to marry the perspective of both the consumer, like what they're going to see on Google when they do the search, and then what is the product market fit of what we're trying to sell. First step is understanding our client's product, who they're trying to reach. Is it a fast decision, like you said? Or is it something that, I'm buying jerky for the week or something, almost like an impulse buy at the checkout versus a $6,000 refrigerator. That's where we kind of think that through. Then we take a look at the marketplace, in this case, the Google search results for those types of products. And we see that Google is really the Wild West right now. You might get something like the shoppable product listings page, which you see on categories for Amazon, or when you do a search, that infinite shelf filled with product tiles. Sometimes you still might see category pages linking to like a manufacturer's website. So in electronics, we see this a lot with Samsung. If you're looking for a Samsung TV, the first preferred seller is Samsung.
Sure.
So depending on a lot of retailers who are trying to sell TVs, but you might see inventory near you might see a local map. You might even see all three of those things in the results. And so the way they display the search results gives us a clue into the intent. If it's straight up e-commerce, if it's local, or if it's something else entirely. And so from there, we do our keyword research. We use Google Ads Keyword Planner, SEMrush, Ahrefs, your tool of choice. And that helps us quantify the biggest opportunities. So like if it's televisions, what type of televisions? Is it the size? Is it the fact that it's a smart or a dumb TV? There's surprisingly, people are searching for what is a TV that is not a smart TV. They want a monitor, baby.
The jitterbuggies, are you saying?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And from there, we'll prioritize the different product features and then kind of align on like a naming schema for the products in the descriptions.
I mean, most of that sort of aligns with my expectation. The interesting thing is understanding the context in which those results will even be displayed to begin with, of like, what is Google going to interpret this search journey as? And then how do we try to match the customer need to our product market fit within the ecosystem of that journey? That's something that did not really occur to me as a kind of critical step now that all of these search results are so diffuse in how they're presented.
Mm-hmm.
Julian, what about your take? I mean, like, how does this reflect on Amazon? Did you follow a similar path with clients when you're sort of first mapping out their SEO journey and strategy?
Yeah, I mean, we really do try to adopt a very similar approach, right? For us, the biggest thing is having them fill out like a questionnaire about their product. So that is going to give our team as much context as possible in terms of who the ideal demographic is, what are the major selling points, why should they buy this over the competition, all of those kinds of pieces of information. And then from there, it's looking at how the product sits within a specific category and identifying the right search terms for that product. It may not be something broad, like they may, for an example, if we're talking about protein powder, right? It may not necessarily be just protein powder. It could be something that is more of like a meal replacement or is focused on like clean ingredients kind of a thing. And so the general terms aren't something that we want to target because we're going to be competing with other brands that don't really care about that. So finding the right terms that the client agrees with and then looking at the search volume within a category for relative terms to that, and then identifying the ones with the highest search volume, making sure that those are used in copy on the listing. But it's also making sure that the copy is brand focused in terms of what they're talking about on their D2C site, right? We don't want to change the overall message of the product. We want to make it work for Amazon. And so we have to kind of make these search terms fit around what they're trying to say. So that way it's like the same experience, but we're doing a little bit of nitty gritty work to rank for the right terms on Amazon.
Yeah. That was what I always enjoyed back when I was more hands-on keeper, either in the SEM or SEO fields. It was a client comes to you and they have a certain perception and they know their brand, right, than anyone else. But what you can bring to them is the insights of like, how are people actually searching for this? And a lot of times it's totally different from how
it is a very interesting conversation to hear somebody say like, well, this is what we want to sell this product as. And then you pull up the search volume and it's like 30 for a month. And then you're like, well, we could use it, but nobody's going to find it because nobody's searching for this. And they're like, oh, wow. It can be very eye-opening. And so it's a little bit of a shift to, we can talk about it the same way, but we just have to use a different term that has much higher search volume.
Got to find all those people with big heads looking for sunglasses.
Yeah,
that's right. Unlock that treasure chest. No, this makes sense all of like when you're sort of getting the lay of the land for clients. But I'm curious, a lot of our brands that we're working with are sort of in a long-term engagement on a retainer basis. And there's no goalpost, right, where you end SEO and you're fully optimized and you will forever be in position one. So I'm just curious, particularly with how
I have one exception for you, Jordan, which I think was...
I love the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah. So during COVID, I did a little bit of freelancing to make up for some lost income, as I think many of us may have done. There was a company that sells the radar speed signs.
Sure.
And that was in their name. That is literally all they had to do was name their product well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's sort of...
radar sign. There you go.
Cars.com approach, right?
Yeah, when you corner a market, you corner a market.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
But for 99% of the other 100% right.
Yeah. Okay. Radar science aside, maybe we'll dedicate a podcast to the radar science case study. If we think about the sort of always on journey of achieving SEO dominance, I'm curious how we approach these. One of those brands that, again, we had a certain strategy 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. The landscape changes, the way the platform collects information and presents your content changes. What are the sort of things that you're doing on an ongoing basis to make sure we stay up to stuff with our strategy here?
Yeah, so I think it's a balance of maintaining what you've already built. So like you said, user behavior may shift. What they're calling it 2 years later is different from what they're calling it 2 years ago. Making sure that our language is up to date. So some of that's just regularly refreshing content, both on product pages, but also the listing pages, and making sure that we're also seeing if people are looking for new categories of product, but our product still suits that category, that we create a representative collection of that. So it's still like an 80-20 rule. So prioritize the 20% of products giving you 80% of the results, and then experimenting with the rest to see what might stick. And that's where we've seen in some retail clients of ours, where we've seen adding what we'll call faceted or feature pages really deliver some incremental results. Is like, well, people are now looking by price point. So we need to have a page or a filter for the price point. So we refine content for that price point, that type of product, and making sure the content reflects that both at the category level and within the product itself. The big shift there, though, is 80-20 rule used to be 80% of our results came from people coming in on a category level page, and now it's flipped. Now 80% of people are coming in on the product level page. We've seen that shift happen.
Which is like a more difficult thing to manage, I would imagine, because you have
especially at scale. Yeah, at scale. And so that's where we've actually been leaning heavily into using AI to get creative here, because how do you rewrite 20,000 SKUs with product titles?
Yeah. Julian, what's your perspective on this in terms of like the sort of content refresh and the kind of ongoing management of SEO for your brands?
Yeah, very similar. I think the way I try to look at it is minimum twice a year, almost like an H1, H2 kind of a thing, because it gives us an opportunity to see if there's anything trending that we weren't using before that's new. And also just to make sure that what we were using is either improving or staying relevant, or if it is declining, it's something to consider as well, like removing that from a title or a bullet point. I think, like every 6 months is good to do that. And it's enough where you can make a change and let it sit and understand the results without being too impulsive and being like, oh, I need to change this again after a week and a half. It's not working, that kind of a thing. So also, Scott's point, when you get into thousands of SKUs, it's just not realistic to do it on less than 6 month basis, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's where also educating our clients, I think, has been really helpful. So we're doing that now, where if we can influence them as they're setting these products up in their core system, the PIM, if you will, of where they're getting the data from and sending it to us, then we can make our lives and their lives so much more efficient. So I think that's where cross education is helpful, because they can tell us about the features and what they mean. And then we can tell them, well, this is how people actually look. This is how you should name them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The other thing too here that seems like a clear parallel is, Scott, a lot of these SEO considerations are in tandem, like UX, UI considerations of a user wants to find the product within this collection of products or be able to filter by this certain way, which on Amazon, we have less control of those actual mechanisms. But the corollary being, I want to present this product as a part of an assortment, right? So I can build that into an A+ page, or the SEO does not exist in a vacuum where you are also looking to see once they land on that page, what are we then presenting that person with to sort of juice conversion. And that actually goes to the next portion of this, which I feel like as things evolve, the measurement around SEO can become more and more complex. In 10 blue links, it was pretty easy to say, I'm in position 1. This is a high volume keyword. I'm winning SEO, right? And that was the sort of beginning and end of that conversation. More and more, I think that's a challenging thing to assess. So I'm curious, both for Google and Amazon, and Scott, maybe we start with you. How do you kind of sift through the metrics that matter, the vanity metrics, when you're actually in an SEO engagement, and how do you approach the measurement around this?
Yeah. So I always say rankings are the shiny object of SEO. I mean, the more you hear about it, the more you should be suspicious from your agency, right?
Gotcha.
And that's because they're a leading indicator, but they're not the ultimate indicator of conversion. And with the search results page we've just been talking about, it could include a map. It can include 24 product tiles. What is position one anymore? And with that much variety and fragmentation. So ranking is well and good, but I'd say it is a vanity metric at worst and a leading metric at best. So as we head from 2024 into 2025, we're really discussing what is the ranking doing for me? And so looking at Search Console, which is sort of our SEO analytics that we get from Google, Merchant Center for e-commerce, which gives us impression and click data on products specifically. That kind of tells us how well we're showing up for users and how often we're being included in those shopping pages. But the real payoff, of course, is looking at transactions and revenue, which we track in GA4 or our client's analytics platform of choice, because that's where the magic happens or doesn't. Rankings are the shiny tinfoil on the present, but what matters is the gift inside, money.
Yeah. This is where I think the adage of where is Amazon heading? Look at Google a few years ago really holds true. I don't know. Julian, I'm curious your perspective on this, on like how we're measuring SEO and what that looks like.
I think that it's spot on, right? It's great if we rank for a search term that has over 1 million searches a month, but what's our conversion rate look like for that term? Are people seeing our product in search results, but not going to it, even though we're showing up in the first organic spot? Is it like a price thing that's pushing them to a different listing immediately? Is it our main image? Like, what's the issue there? So ultimately, being able to test how we're converting for that specific term, or like, what do our sessions look like? What's our click-through rate look like? Those kinds of things where you're able to see more than just a ranking. Because I think to Scott's point, it's great. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't turn into dollars and cents, is it as important as it should be just to be ranking at the top?
Yeah. And this is where I feel like Amazon has some space to catch up because, and maybe they don't want to catch up. It's always a bit of a battle with Amazon in terms of how much data they're going to expose about their platform versus a relatively owned ecosystem like Google Search Console and GA4, where it's like, it's in Google's interest to give you that data because it means like you sort of owning your D2C and driving more revenue through search results and that sort of thing. Whereas with Amazon, it's like, if I want to understand where my position is, most of the time I'm going to have to get that through scrape data that I'm getting through a third party. There's no Search Console equivalent in Amazon. The closest thing they have is those sort of search query reports, which give you a good amount of that data, but I'm not going to get like search term level organic conversion data to the extent that I could in GA4, where I get a whole sort of user flow behind it. So yeah, some areas I think that Amazon might, and I still say positions are a cleaner, like organic positions in Amazon SERP is a cleaner environment, a more simple environment that I would find on Google, but who knows for how long.
For sure.
This is actually a great segue into sort of our prognostication of the future and where we see things headed. We've touched on this a lot, but I think in both Amazon and Google, SEO, or what we think of when we even talk about SEO, is in a period of people, good or bad. I'm wondering, like, where do we see this going in both environments, right? Google and Amazon. What does it look like 6 months, a year from now? How are we preparing for that? Scott, I know you think about this maybe too much. Maybe your family would appreciate it. Less minutes dwelling on this. But we start with you, and where do you see this going for SEO generally?
Yeah. So SEO is going everywhere. We're going to the stars eventually, right? I think it's a lot like trying to predict the next thing that's going to go viral. It's no doubt going to have moments of being cringe, as my kids would say.
Yeah, sure.
AI is definitely taking form. At first, it was a beta that felt like it. I think it took about a year plus before it rolled out.
Within Google, like the Gemini system specifically.
Yeah, within the Gemini, driving the AI results. Now it's part of every day. And we're seeing businesses that, and publishers as well, that previously would be getting a lot of traffic from how many times a day do I brush my teeth to how do I change a tire on my own, to getting that answer right in the results and not clicking on anything. So I think the search results aren't 10 links anymore. It's maps, videos, snippets, AI answers that pull from the content we create. So to me, it's like for a brand that is wondering, well, should I even start writing the content? The answer is yes, because Google needs to build its understanding about what you do as a business from how you talk about yourself and the content on your site. And that's further going to be important as we think about AI platforms like ChatGPT itself and Perplexity and the platforms where people are in the walled garden of the AI chatbot. But it's still early days to kind of figure out whether or not that's going to turn into user action, or if it's going to be like the delay cycle we see for higher consideration purchases, where maybe a lot of that upper funnel behavior, like what should I buy my wife for Christmas, might happen in ChatGPT. I give it context about her preferences and it helps me come up with ideas. But I doubt very much that, unless I'm the laziest sitcom husband of the world, that I'm going to click on and buy something that it suggests directly without doing some of the closing actions, either offline or going to different retailers and Amazon as well. I think that's going to be really important to make sure that you're still creating content that's full funnel.
That's interesting because I've always heard or thought of the search experience as a zero-sum game, right? Like either search engines would win out by incorporating more AI and kind of fend off newer entrants, or people would discover that something like a Perplexity is a much better user experience and user journey, and search engines as we know it would go the way of the past. But you're saying that depending on the amount of consideration, where I'm at in the shopper journey, like both could have a meaningfully valuable place.
Yeah, we're seeing this across all of our e-commerce clients, really, honestly, where traffic is down. And a lot of that is because of, if it's something about like product maintenance or something like that, is being answered in the result itself. But we're also seeing transactions and sales go up. So it's like the inverse of what we expect to see happen is happening. Yeah.
Which is an indication of some siphoning off of shoppers from that area of I come through Google or I come through a search engine to a site, but those shoppers aren't going away. They just have more diffuse avenues to
find. They may close the deal on the e-commerce website, but they're spending more time elsewhere deciding.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Julian, within the world of Amazon and what you eat and breathe and sleep outside of golf and your other activities when I'm not listening to Taylor Swift, where do you see Amazon heading in this sort of SEO journey?
Yeah, I think AI is a big part of it, right? Like they've rolled out Rufus. I mean, it's still in beta, but...
Have you used it?
I have. So
I've played around with it, but have you purchased something from a primarily Rufus journey?
Yeah. To give you an example, I used it to research pickleball paddles. Like I already have one. I know what I'm going to buy, like whatever. But I wanted to see how the tool would work based on what I wanted to know. And so I think it's great for people who don't have any idea, right? If they come to Amazon, and to your point earlier, right? You were like, I'm overwhelmed. There's like so many sellers selling the same product. How do I know what's real? If I'm just getting started and it's like, okay, what's the best paddle for pickleball for starters? And it's going to give you a bunch of listings. You can ask then like which ones are best for control or power, and it'll change its answers. Then you can say like, is there an option? It gets a little wonky when you're like asking it if it has color schemes or like different pattern. Then it's like, I don't know the answer. You're getting too granular. I'm not there yet kind of a thing. But it's a huge part of what's going to be coming. And again, it's only in beta. So as they iron it out, it's going to get even better. And it's part of Cosmo, right? Like that's their bigger project, which is basically an AI generated kind of, they call it like common sense knowledge basically. And it's so how are you and your products going to speak to Amazon's AI bot to show up appropriately when somebody's looking for that product? And there's a bunch of, I'm doing research on this now to figure out the best way to utilize it, but there's so many questions that you would have to be product specific, right? And this could get a little crazy if you've got thousands of SKUs to talk about, but if this is the future, like it's the future, to be able to answer all those questions about the product and then who's your ideal shopper and what do you want them to purchase this for and where do you want them to use it and where do they work? And like, those are things that you have to answer on your product page through your content and your copy. All of it has to play a bigger picture in helping conversions and potentially pleasing this new algorithm that's AI driven. And it's exciting, but it's a big overhaul in terms of how things I think were done or have been done to this point, because it's not going anywhere based on what I'm seeing.
And to Scott's point, it becomes, we could see a world in which Amazon owning both the AI discovery portion of the funnel and the lower funnel purchase, you could be optimizing for two different journeys, like the sort of help me get discovered by the AI at the top of the funnel, but also then help me rank well. If Amazon then, here are your 8 results based on the criteria that you define in the upper funnel, how do I then present it there? So,
and is it customer review generated too? Because that's a big part of it. And I think one thing that's really important to consider is the UGC aspect of what is important on Amazon, right? Because it calls back to reviews from people you don't know, but they're actual shoppers, and content that they may leave, even if it's like an unboxing or if it's just talking about a specific product and it's not from the brand. You're going to have the trust in the brand when you're looking for it, but you're validated by knowing that all of these random people are leaving these reviews, and that's also going to please the AI algorithm. When you search or you put in Rufus, like, show me the best pickleball paddles for beginners, you're going to get the results based on not only the conversion in Amazon's eyes, but the products that people keep have the best reviews, the best experience for their shoppers. And so, to your point, how do you please that, but then also still rank and search historically for the right search term?
Yeah.
You have to click on Rufus to engage it, right?
Yeah, it's not going to run.
You don't just go into search and type something and like it starts talking to you. You have to ask it.
Like a well-trained dog, you have to search.
Yeah, exactly. For now, until it starts responding to your search results.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
Yeah. I think if we've learned anything today, it's a sort of broad arc of time bends towards complexity rather than simplicity here, which ultimately leads to a better experience for the customer. I know there's a lot of critics to how search has developed in the many years because of people trying to optimize for one specific customer journey or customer path. And I think that becomes less possible over time, but hopefully more interesting and more compelling to us as shoppers, not only just marketers. But that's a fantastic place to leave things today. I'm so excited to catch up maybe 6 months from now, a year from now, and see where things are at. But Scott, Julian, really appreciate your time today. This was a ton of fun.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you. Maybe we can have Rufus or Cosmo join the next call.
Yeah, get their take on Taylor Swift.
ChatGPT could be.
I'll put open AI in voice mode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when this podcast is replaced by our overlords, that's how things are going. Excellent. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you both.